As any of you who have poked around on my channel will realize, the Lotus Sutra is a Buddhist scripture, a Mahayana or Great Vehicle scripture that I highly revere, and one that I've recited, in one case unabridged, or maybe a couple of cases, different versions of it, different translations. I haven't done a whole lot on the Leon Hurvitz translation, which he came out with in 1976. Or that's when it was first published by Columbia University Press. I have quoted some of his descriptions of chapter summaries, but basically at this time what I would like to do is to recite Hurvitz's rendering of the 25th chapter of the Lotus Sutra. And again, in the context of the Lotus, this 25th chapter regarding Avalokitesvara, or the regarder of the cries of the world, is just such a sublime and wonderful and important chapter, such an important chapter that it was actually published as a separate document. This Bodhisattva, known as Kuan Yin in China, or Yin, and also as Kannon in Japan, and has other names. I think it's Chen Rinzig in Tibetan. Korea has their name for this Bodhisattva, this great Bodhisattva who represents infinite compassion, a Bodhisattva who is revered and I would say even worshipped by many millions and tens of millions of people in Asia over the course of the centuries. Hurvitz entitles this chapter, "The Gateway to Everywhere of the Bodhisattva, He Who Observes the Sounds of the World." At that time, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Inexhaustible Mind, or Aksayamati, straightway rose from his seat and facing the Buddha with palms joined said, "O world-honored one, for what reason is the Bodhisattva he who observes the sounds of the world, or Avalokitesvara, called observer of the sounds of the world?" The Buddha declared to the Bodhisattva Inexhaustible Mind, "Good man, if incalculable hundreds of thousands of myriads of millions of living beings, suffering pain and torment, hear of this Bodhisattva, he who observes the sounds of the world, and single-mindedly calls upon his name, the Bodhisattva, he who observes the sounds of the world, shall straightway heed their voices, and all shall gain deliverance. If there is one who keeps the name of this Bodhisattva, he who observes the sounds of the world, even if he should fall into a great fire, the fire would be unable to burn him, thanks to the imposing supernatural power of this Bodhisattva. If he should be carried off by a great river and call upon this Bodhisattva's name, then straightway he would find a shallow place. If 100,000 myriads of millions of living beings enter the great sea in quest of gold, silver, vidurya, giant clamshell, agate, coral, amber, pearl, and other such gems, even if a black wind blows their ship away, carrying it off and plunging it into the realm of the Rakshasa ghosts, if there is among them but one man who calls upon the name of the Bodhisattva, he who observes the sounds of the world, those men shall be delivered from the troubles caused by the Rakshasas. It is for this reason that he is called Observer of the Sounds of the World. If again a man who is about to be murdered calls upon the name of the Bodhisattva, he who observes the sounds of the world, then the knives and staves borne by the other fellow shall be broken in pieces, and the man shall gain deliverance. If there should be 1,000,000,000-fold world of lands filled with Yaksas and Rakshasas, if they should but hear the name of the Bodhisattva, he who observes the sounds of the world, these malignant ghosts would not be able even to look upon those others with an evil eye, how much less to inflict harm on them. Even if there is a man, whether guilty or guiltless, whose body is fettered with stocks, pillory, or chains, if he calls upon the name of the Bodhisattva, he who observes the sounds of the world, they shall all be severed and broken, and he shall straightway gain deliverance. If, in a 1,000,000,000-fold world of lands full of malicious bandits, there is a merchant chief whose men are carrying precious gems over a road by a steep drop, if there is among them one man who makes this proclamation, "Good men, do not let terror take possession of you. You all must single-mindedly call upon the name of the Bodhisattva, he who observes the sounds of the world. For that Bodhisattva can confer fearlessness upon living beings. If you call upon his name, then from these malicious bandits you shall contrive to be delivered." And if the multitude of merchants, hearing this, speak these words in unison, saying, "Namu Bodhisattvaya, he who observes the sounds of the world," then, by the mere calling of his name, they shall forthwith gain deliverance. Inexhaustible mind, the imposing supernatural power of the Bodhisattva, he who observes the sounds of the world, is as sublime as this. If there are beings of much lust who are constantly mindful and humbly respectful to the Bodhisattva, he who observes the sounds of the world, they shall straightway contrive to be separated from their lust. If those with much anger are constantly mindful of and humbly respectful to the Bodhisattva, he who observes the sounds of the world, they shall straightway contrive to be separated from their anger. If those of much folly are constantly mindful of and humbly respectful to the Bodhisattva, he who observes the sounds of the world, they shall straightway contrive to be separated from their folly. Inexhaustible mind, such imposing supernatural power as the Bodhisattva, he who observes the sounds of the world, so many are the benefits he confers. For this reason, the beings should ever bear him in mind. The sound observer, by virtue of his unblemished knowledge, can rescue the world from its woes. He is fully endowed with the power of supernatural penetration and broadly cultivates wisdom and expedient devices. In the lands of all 10 quarters, there is no Kshetra where he does not display his body. The various evil destinies, those of hell, ghosts, and beasts, as well as the pains of birth, old age, sickness, and death, all, little by little, are extinguished. O you of the true gaze, of the pure gaze, of the gaze of broad and great wisdom, of the compassionate gaze and the gaze of goodwill, the spotlessly pure ray of light, the sun of wisdom that banishes all darkness, that can subdue the winds and flames of misfortune and everywhere give bright light to the world. The thunder of the monastic prohibitions, whose essence is goodwill, and the great and subtle cloud, which is the sense of compassion, pour forth the Dharma rain of sweet dew, extinguishing and removing the flames of agony. When disputes go through civil offices, when they terrify military camps, by virtue of constant mindfulness of sound observer, the multitude of enemies shall all withdraw and scatter. The delicate-voiced, one who observes the sounds of the world, and the Brahma-voiced sound of the tide are superior to the sounds of the world. Therefore, one must ever be mindful of them. From moment to moment conceive no doubts, for the pure saint who observes the sounds of the world in the discomforts of pain, agony, and death can be a point of reliance. Fully endowed with all the merits, his benevolent eye beholding the beings, he is happiness accumulated, a sea incalculable. For this reason one must bow one's head to him.